Well, good day and welcome to you. It is November the 12th, and I hope you're having a fantastic Friday wherever you happen to be listening to this video. Now, if you're new to Search for Signs, my name is Gary Willing, and I want to welcome you along with those who have heard these videos before. And here on Search for Signs, we talk about the emergence of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom and pretty much everything that we can talk about in relation to that. So hopefully you'll look at some of the other videos I put up, listen to them, listen to some of the articles that I've read from Benjamin Creme's master, that kind of thing. But if you want to know more about this, you want to educate yourself better, or even see if there's any truth to it for yourself or not, definitely check out the links that I provided in the description portion of this video. I think they can help. They're not the only links that you can go to get more information about this, but if you go to the Share International site, I do think you can get more information about what we talk about here than anywhere else. And there you can pretty much just nip it all in the bud, and within a few minutes you can see if there's any truth to it for yourself. So definitely check it out. Hopefully you'll take advantage of it. Like I said, links in the description. Now, let's get on into it. I have been talking about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom for over 2 decades. And the times that I've engaged the public or even talked to my family, friends, and coworkers about this, if they are interested in this kind of information, and that's a big if, okay, when we start talking together about this, their eyes light up about the future for humanity, the possibility of peace, the ending of hunger, even some of the science fiction interpretations they might have of life in the future if we all just get along together and so forth, whatever it happens to be, right? Or they might be more interested in the spiritual side of things, and that lights them up that way. Now, invariably, when I bring up this one word, it begins with an S and ends with a G. And even the times that I've put these videos up and I put that word in the title, that my viewership goes down. Not that I'm looking for views, but I've just noticed that it's not clickbaiting by any chance, by any stretch of the imagination. But the word is sharing. And every time I bring it up, it kind of turns people off. Okay, now, I do want to say this before I get going with this, okay? So if you're new or if you've heard these videos before and you haven't heard us talk about sharing, I am in no way asking you for money. I've never asked for money from anybody when I put these videos up. There's no donation link. There's nothing, okay? So let's just get that squared away right now, okay? I have a job that I do pretty well with. I don't need any money. This is just me volunteering my time to talk about this incredible story. So let's get that straight. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in the news a few weeks ago, there was a gentleman named David Beasley, who is the director of the UN World Food Program. And he was being interviewed on CNN, and he was talking about hunger. And then he called out a couple billionaires, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And if you don't know who those two guys are, you've been living under a rock, because they're always in the news almost on a daily basis. And they flip-flop roles from either being the first or the second richest man in the world. So every once in a while, it might be a Tuesday, and they're like, well, now Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world. And people are like, yay! And then on Wednesday, because his Amazon stock tanked, well, now Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. So they kind of flip-flop back and forth. But together, I think they have a combined wealth of $500 billion or pretty close to it. A lot of money. And I could go on and harp on them for the next hour about their role and how greedy they are and how they don't pay their fair share in taxes or whatever like that. But I don't want to do that, okay? So that's all I wanted to say about that whole thing. I wanted to talk about what this director of the UN Food Program, David Beasley, was talking about. Because when he was on CNN, like I said, a couple weeks ago, he said billionaires need to step up now on a one-time basis. And then he cited Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And he said $6 billion to help 42 million people that are literally going to die if we don't reach them. It's not complicated, he added. Now, I wanted to talk about it from a couple standpoints. Okay, first of all, I do think that it would help, for sure, right, if the ultra-wealthy saw it as their responsibility to help the poor. I would love it to see that, right? But I wanted to talk about it in terms of the principle of sharing and how Maitreya is talking about it and how it's core to his priorities, but it's what it really will look like. Okay, so because there's a tremendous misunderstanding about how money in and of itself is going to be what ends hunger. Now, it could help, like I said, it could help, but it's not it. And even if all the ultra wealthy gave $6 billion or 2% of their wealth or whatever it happens to be to end hunger, yes, it would definitely alleviate, and it would be a great thing for not only the billionaires, but also for the people that it helped, right? But that in and of itself, according to what the masters are saying about sharing, would not bring about justice, and it would not bring about peace. So, individuals, of course, will eventually start to see it as their need on an individual basis of how much they want to give whenever they want to give it. Okay, but it's going to be up to the individual to decide that for himself. Okay, nobody's going to force any one of us, whether we're ultra wealthy or in the middle class or lower middle class or poor even, to give money and take money out of our bank account and give it to them. That's not what it is. And it's not socialism and it's not communism. It's something totally different. It transcends that, really. If you want to really make the case for sharing, from what Maitreya is advocating, okay, it has to do with nations, nation to nation. And it's when nations take an inventory of the excesses of resources that are not being used, that they're oftentimes hoarding and giving it freely to other nations. That's basically what it is. And then I've cited, over the years that I've talked about the principle of sharing, I've cited as a historical example the Marshall Plan, which was a endeavor that the United States did to help save Europe right after World War II, where they took an inventory of their resources that they weren't using: lumber, steel, concrete, building supplies, food, clothing, whatever it happened to be, and gave it freely to Western Europe to rebuild Western Europe. It stabilized the countries of Western Europe, rebuilt Western Europe, and then once the Europeans started to kind of create excesses of themselves, they gave it back to the United States in payment for what they took. That's basically a very basic look at what the principle of sharing was going to be, and what it is going to be, and what it was 70 or so years ago. Now, the Marshall Plan only lasted for a few years, and it ended in the probably late 40s, early 50s. Okay, and since then, the nations that participated in it trust one another better than they do any other nations on the planet. And the United States, England, France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Germany, just to name a few, had at once been at war with one another, and it actually had been, up until recently, fighting with one another in World War II. But since then, there's not been any conflict between those nations. So there is truth and historical evidence that what Maitreya is saying is, without sharing, there could be no justice. Without justice, there could be no peace. Without peace, there could be no future. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, I want to read an article from Benjamin Creme's master, who you can get a better idea of what the masters are saying about sharing by reading it, by going to the Share International website and reading it, but you can listen to me read it if you want. But I wanted to kind of add to the discussion about what this David Beasley and Elon Musk, this kind of, they're going back and forth on Twitter about. Because Elon Musk said, well, if you can prove that my $6 billion was going to end hunger, well then shoot, I'll cash in my Tesla stock and we'll do it today, right? Of course, both of those gentlemen know that it's not going to end hunger. It would definitely help, and if Elon Musk actually had a heart, he would do it. But he's just as greedy as everybody else, apparently, and he doesn't want to give up any bit of his power and his wealth to help the poor. Why would you do that? You know what I mean? So, but he's right in a way that it's not going to end hunger, and it's certainly not going to bring about justice, and it's not going to bring about peace. Because sharing, the reason why it's so important, and why humanity must look at it, is because even our environment can't be saved until nations learn to trust one another better. And the only way they can trust one another is to start sharing amongst themselves. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why sharing is so important. So even if all these individuals did it, it's not going to bring about the trust amongst the nations that are needed to solve these problems. So just something to kind of think about, something to kind of look at. But it's interesting when I've talked about sharing over the years, one, how little interest there is from people just talking about it, which is the reason why our world leaders aren't interested in it at this time. The other thing is that people relate it to socialism or communism, which it isn't. And then the other thing that people like to do is they like to cite examples of organizations or countries that give money to the poor, which is not it. It has to do with taking excesses of resources and giving it to other countries. That's it. And then that would bring about the trust, which would bring about justice and bring about peace, according to Maitreya, which will give us a future. So now I want to read an article written by Benjamin Creme's master entitled The Case for Sharing. So this is his view on why sharing is so important. There will shortly come a time when humanity must reach a great decision, troubled as it is on all sides by divisions and cleavage. A new approach must be found to the many problems which beset it. Without such a new approach, there is little doubt an ominous future would await mankind. Historically, there is no precedent for the present situation and conditions on Earth. Never before have so many souls coexisted on the planet. Seldom, if ever, have the divisions between the groups been so painful and deep. Never has man controlled such forces of destruction as are now at his command, giving him power to destroy the life in every kingdom. When such destruction threatens, man must take stock and devise new ways to proceed. Of all the possible ways, there yet remains but one untried. Throughout his history, one simple answer has eluded man's grasp. The principle of sharing is the only one answer which will answer man's needs and solve his many problems, for it is fundamental to the plan of God himself. Without sharing, man denies his divinity and stores up for himself all future woes. Without sharing, unholy chaos reigns and withholds from men the justice which is his by right. Sharing alone provides the opportunity to establish God's plan of brotherhood and to remove from the world forever the sin of separation. How lacking sharing could man continue? How without sharing could he hope to survive? So great are the dangers in the present imbalance between the nations that luck alone would not suffice to see him through. A deadly sickness, separation and greed, prevails upon the earth and calls for drastic measures to effect a cure. The simple cure is at hand despite the outer chaos. The long-drawn testing of mankind is all but at an end. Arrayed against forces which still hold man in thrall, the hierarchy of light retrace their steps and stand together under the banner of truth. Maitreya's mission begins with an appeal to men to share. His knowledge of men's hearts leaves him certain of their choice and certain of their readiness to make the needed changes. Quote, "Man must share or die," unquote, has he said, knowing well that men will choose to share and live and to create with him a better future. Until now, all efforts to solve man's problems have been directed to maintaining the present structures, however unjust they have proved themselves to be. The cleavages on every hand cry out for resolution and await the application of the law of justice. Fear grips many today as they hear their leaders wrangle. A time is coming when they will leave their leaders far behind. Man is awakening to the call for freedom and needs only true leadership to set the world to rights. Maitreya has come to show the way and to lead men to brotherhood and justice. A new era opens under his wise direction, which will demonstrate the true divinity of man, establishing the means of sharing and cooperation, and thus fulfilling the plan of God. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.